Plans start as low as $1 per day and will pay your family up to $30,000 to help pay for your funeral and other expenses. There are no medical exams, your rates will never increase, and your plan cannot be canceled regardless of your medical conditions as long as you make your premium payments. Get up to $30,000 in final expense insurance. Call now for free information. Just answer a few simple questions and get approved right over the phone in just a few minutes. Call right now.
Call 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. That's 800-378-3818.
My name is Dale Pazinski. I volunteer with United Way to help the homeless in my community learn computer skills and build a basic resume. I don't just wear the shirt, I live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, Live United. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
This is the Money Matters Radio Network, WBNW 1120 AM and W275CM FM, Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
Sometimes we know what's next. Other times, it's impossible to know. Life can change in an instant. Don't be caught standing by the next time someone's heart stops. Knowing CPR gives you the ability to act and takes you from bystander to lifesaver. CPR is a life-saving skill. Join the nation of lifesavers today by learning CPR at heart.org/nation. National support for CPR education provided by Elevance Health Foundation.
Is it a stroke? Even if you're not sure, act fast and call 911. Signs can include face drooping on one side, arm weakness, speech difficulty, or not making sense when talking. Time is critical. A stroke requires immediate medical care, which starts as soon as the ambulance arrives. So if you see any sign of stroke, act fast and call 911. Visit mass.gov/stroke, sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health.
Hi, this is Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we have a new guide available this month. It is titled Trusts in Your Financial Plan. Mike, when you look at the big reasons that someone might want to undertake trust planning and how that dovetails with financial planning, what are the big items that come up for a lot of people?
Yeah, for most common reasons, there's four that I think about. One, in certain states and across the country, there's an estate tax, and so there's trusts that can help you mitigate the cost of that estate tax for future generations. There's trusts that can allow you to do sorts of bloodline planning. Maybe you have minor children and you're worried about passing away young. You can have trusts that are set up to deal with that situation. You have trusts that can avoid probate. And then the fourth one is sometimes a trust that might help deal with creditor protection. Sometimes a nursing home would be one of those creditors.
When we talk about financial planning, generally we're talking about things such as budgeting or investment allocations and things like that, and making that work to get you the money when you want it. How do you view trusts as fitting into that as well?
Well, it's one of those boxes that you need to check, and it goes along with other estate planning documents like a will, like a healthcare proxy. But important for most people, especially those in New England, to at least have the conversation around trusts and whether or not it fits into their strategy.
The guide, again, is titled Trusts in Your Financial Plan, and it is available for you to request at no cost. All you have to do is call 800-393-4001. The title, again, is Trusts in Your Financial Plan, and the way to request the guide is by calling 800-393-4001.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. We pride ourselves on being able to support veterans in their time of greatest need, ensuring they receive the protections they deserve. For over 100 years, the DAV of Massachusetts has helped thousands of veterans with housing, transportation, and medical assistance, and you can help too. Please visit dav5k.boston and make a donation today. That's dav5k.boston.
The United States Virgin Islands is consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations. And recently, 2 of their beaches, Trunk Bay in St. John and Maggins Bay in St. Thomas, were voted a top 10 best beach in the Caribbean at the 2025 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards. From the pristine beaches to its world-class dining, rich history, incredible golf, and perfect weather, the USVI has everything you need to make memories that will last a lifetime. From the moment you arrive, you will fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or a family vacation, the U.S. Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next adventure. Go to visitusvi.com right now for more information and to book your trip. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Go to visitusvi.com today. That's visitusvi.com. The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Marc Fandetti. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Marc Fandetti.
Chuck, Mark, and Tucker with you here today on a Fed Day. The Federal Reserve is going to announce the outcome of their open market committee meeting at 2 p.m. today. Jay Powell is going to pop on the purple tie and tell us all a whole bunch of nothing at 2:30 because I don't really expect any bombshells from him. Nothing, particularly exciting or interesting. And so I think by and large, this, to me, is one of the, correctly so, least anticipated Fed meetings that I can recall. And if you don't want to pay attention to it this afternoon, go out, cut yourself some tulips, make sure the lawn looks good. You don't need to watch Jay. Your thoughts, Mark?
I'm interested in how he addresses rising inflation expectations because they're such an important part of the inflation process. That was the primary lesson and innovation to the way economists think about inflation coming out of the 1970s. The Fed views it as its job to keep expectations in check as a result of that experience. One way to do it is to talk to the public. We often talk about the Fed talking too much to the public to the point where we're inundated with contrasting viewpoints. It gets confusing. But this is one instance where the Fed may feel compelled based on the jump in survey-based expectations and, to a lesser degree, some financial market-based expectations have increased in the past several weeks. It is their job to tamp those down, and it makes their longer-term job easier if they can do it effectively.
Can you talk a little bit, what are the mechanics by which higher or lower, what are the mechanics by which inflation expectations feed into actual inflation? Or like, what do people think they are, because none of this is physics?
Right. So it is a little bit mysterious, and I'm always a little uncomfortable when I repeat the conventional economic wisdom, because the mechanism is, well, people will demand higher wages, and if unemployment's low enough, they'll be able to get them. Firms, if there are separate surveys of firms' expectations versus people. We usually talk about people, but there are firm surveys as well. Those have gone up, though not by as much as people's expectations. The theory is, well, if firms expect higher input prices, they'll start raising prices in anticipation of that to maintain their margins. So that's more or less the channel through which expectations make their way into actual inflation. Pretty straightforward, pretty much exactly what you would think.
Let me ask this, because in terms of, you mentioned it's kind of like after the 1970s is when inflation expectations became a thing that economists paid attention to and built into their models of inflation.
Yeah.
Are we kind of dealing with a sample size of one then? I guess what I'm asking is, how big have the variations in inflation expectations been since then?
Yeah.
And is there anything that proves, okay, this is something that should be, really followed closely? Or is it something where, hey, they went up in the 70s and so did inflation, so now we've built it into our model, but maybe it's not that important?
It's possible.
I don't have any dog in this fight,
It's a great point. Neither do I. We should follow the evidence. And if the evidence at some point suggests that expectations, when you take them out of your little model, for those of us that fool around with these types of things, and some people do it much more seriously than I do, if you take them out of your model and your model does an equally good job of explaining past inflation and predicting inflation out of sample, then you don't need expectations. So that's one way to answer that question. To this point, expectations have helped models do a better job of predicting inflation out of sample, which is what you want. Another point I'll make is the observation was made before the experience of the 70s. It was actually Milton Friedman. I dropped the name because a lot of people have heard of him.
Sure.
He popularized a lot of ideas, and many of us owe our understanding at a very basic level of economics to the way he taught it to us on his PBS specials, and he wrote for Newsweek and other channels, other forms of media. He made the observation in the 1960s that you can't fool all the people all the time. It was prevalent, believe it or not, in the 60s to think that you just had to pick an inflation unemployment point in the relationship between the two. It was literally called a menu. Well, we could go with 5% inflation if that gets us to 3.5% unemployment. Let's pick that point on the menu. That was the prevailing wisdom.
That seems bad.
Yeah, well, eventually people caught on. That's why people figured out, well, wait a minute, you're just going to goose the money supply, and I'm going to be worse off. My real wages go down when inflation goes up, so I'm going to get ahead of that. Friedman and others, but mainly Friedman because he was the most powerful proponent of the idea, but I'll mention Edmund Phelps too, who also won a Nobel Prize for similar insights, among other things. They recognized that you can't fool all the people all the time, and they predicted the inflation of the 70s before it happened. That's when Milton Friedman really became a household name, and that's why so many of us who don't otherwise care to know much about economics know his name.
So when you look at this Fed meeting, it would seem to me that, again, I don't think there's anything that's going to be notable in the broad Fed statement. There's certainly, not certainly because nothing's certain, but right now the CME Fed Funds futures market is pricing in a 99.0% chance that the Fed does not change interest rates at this meeting. So, clearly, it's really unlikely that you see anything out of the actual meeting. It's going to be much more, what's the tone of Jay Powell's talk? Is it neutral? Is it dovish? Is it hawkish? And through there, I think you can then infer, what is the Fed most concerned about at this point? Is it rising inflation expectations? And now what we're seeing in terms of rising costs. As an example, we got used car prices for last month that just came in, up 2.7% month over month, which is a big jump and obviously not sustainable. But I think the question here is, does the Fed see some of those rising prices and inflation expectations and say, this is where we're going to be concerned? Do they see the soft data surveys about future hiring and the job market and future orders and things like that and say, hey, we're going to be more concerned about that? Or, what's probably the most likely path, we view these risks as balanced right now, and we'll respond appropriately when the time comes based on how the data evolves.
I think that has to be your opening statement.
Yep.
I think you also have to address what we have seen in the data, which, as we've already talked about, is spiking expectations, and you just brought up an excellent data point about used car prices. I hope Powell doesn't speak to anything except for what we've already seen printed. And we've already seen some interesting stuff printed that should make for some good press conference fodder.
Yep. Yeah, that data, by the way, that is, y'all remember back in 2021 and 22, the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index? It's back, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're talking about here. So that came out this morning, and the April print came in at a reading of 208.2, up from 202.6. Basically, all you do is you divide the latter into the former and say, okay, what's the change? 2.7% month over month. That is a big, big move up. Typically, pre-2020, what we saw in any given year was normally a 1 to 1.5% fluctuation over the entire course of the year. A big year would be a year like 2017, where used car prices went up about a little more than 3% for the entire year, but that was not the norm. The norm for most of the 2010s was a 1 to 2% fluctuation in either direction, by the way. The index was sitting at a reading of 123.6 it was sitting at a reading of 131.9 at the end of 2009. At the start of 2017, it was 136.2. So used cars generally didn't see a huge shift in their pricing over the 2010s. You can blame a weak economy. You can blame too many cars being produced, whatever you want to say. But you didn't really see a whole lot of movement. It's only really in the last 5 or 6 years that it's become a thing where used vehicle prices have been moving around significantly more. So a 2.7% move in a month, look, it is a data point the Fed will pay attention to, because there is a direct pass-through, whether it's going to show up in the April data or the May one, there's a direct pass-through into CPI and PCE. It does matter pretty meaningfully for those data sets based on the weighting that it gets there. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, that's enough Fed talk for, the least anticipated Fed meeting ever. We don't need to do more than one segment. When we come back, though, let's talk a little bit about the U.S. and China. They're going to be getting together in Switzerland over the weekend. We'll talk about what our expectations are for that meeting after this.
The global trade war has roiled markets, and a recession could be next. Keep it here for breaking business news and complete market updates on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod is perfect for your next New England vacation. Located just off Route 6 in Hyannis, the resort has everything you need to enjoy an incredible week with your family or a quick weekend getaway. Along with first-class accommodations and food, Fins Up Water Park is packed with aquatic adventures that will keep the kids entertained for hours. The summer season is coming soon, so make plans today for a fun-filled vacation at Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod. For more information and to book your trip, visit MargaritavilleResortsCapeCod.com.
Hi, I'm Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. The DAV of Massachusetts provides thousands of hours of voluntary services at our VA medical centers and soldiers' homes, and is the only DAV department in the country to lead a veterans housing initiative for both single veterans and those with families. These programs are critical to serving our veterans in their time of need. You can help our great American heroes by making a donation today. Please visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Creating the right estate plan to help secure your future takes effort. Cushing & Dolan are experts in estate planning. Their new guide is called Detour Ahead, Estate Planning Blunders to Avoid. In it, you'll learn how to make the right decisions to always protect your assets while avoiding costly mistakes, any one of which could have a dramatic and damaging effect on your financial strategy. As an example, if you've created a trust more than 10 years ago and haven't updated it since, you're setting yourself up for problems. Don't take chances with the assets you've worked so hard to attain. Cushing & Dolan's new guide will help you address issues like this, so call right now, 866-848-5699, and ask for your copy of our new free guide called Detour Ahead, Estate Planning Blunders to Avoid. That's 866-848-5699. Or request it online from their website, LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Estate and financial planning go hand in hand, and one of the most common ways to keep that bond secure is with a trust. Our new guide, called Trusts in Your Financial Plan, is available right now. In it, we'll discuss the various types of trusts that exist and how they might benefit your planning process. Trusts provide a number of different protections for your assets, including privacy, control, and tax efficiency. If you're retired or nearing retirement and have concerns about your financial strategy and whether or not a trust may help, call us today at 800-393-4001 and ask for your free guide called Trusts in Your Financial Plan. Learn about how a trust could make a difference for you and your family by calling 800-393-4001. That number again is 800-393-4001, or you can request the guide from ArmstrongAdvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
The Financial Exchange streams live on YouTube. Like our page and stay up to date on breaking business news all morning long. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This segment of the Financial Exchange is brought to you in part by the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Tourism. The U.S. Virgin Islands are St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John and are consistently voted one of the top Caribbean vacation destinations. Enjoy world-class cuisine, pristine beaches, rich history, and a vibrant nightlife. Book your trip now to visit America's Caribbean paradise, the United States Virgin Islands. For reservations and more information, go to visitusvi.com. That's visitusvi.com.
All right, so announced, I think this was around maybe 6:30 yesterday. I don't remember where the announcement was initially made, but Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer are heading to Switzerland this weekend. It's part of a broader set of meetings. I think they were already heading out there, but they did say that they were going to be meeting with He Fang, who is China's vice premier and basically kind of runs the economy for Xi Jinping. They're going to be sitting down to start meeting over the weekend. It looks like they'll be getting there on Friday, and the meetings will be happening mostly Saturday and Sunday, potentially into Monday as well. So you see this news, and initially, like, first thing I do when I get, one of these alerts that comes through my phone is I'm like, okay, like, what are the futures doing, if they're trading at that time? And the first thing that was kind of interesting was you didn't really get much of a pop. It was 0.2%, 0.75%, and just kind of hung out there. By the time the market opened this morning, it was like 0.25 to 0.33%. So I sit there and I'm like, okay, like let's try to make sense out of this, because a few different conflicting thoughts come into my head. And these are just different possibilities. Like, none of us know what's going to happen. First one is, okay, you don't send the Treasury Secretary and U.S. Trade Representative to Switzerland if you don't have a pretty good idea through back channels or, staffers that something is going to get done. It's bad. Like, is the optics, and this is how it is with any deal of any kind, not just trade. This is any kind of international negotiation. you don't usually bring the heads of state or cabinet level people to the table until everything's hashed out, because the general way that this works is you don't want people at that level between countries to have animosity between them. You want to have the staffers fight it out and be the people that are, swearing and yelling at each other and throwing papers across the room and all that. You don't want to have presidents doing that stuff because it's unseemly and doesn't generally play well. It's not really a sign of stability of the country. So, first glance, it's like, okay, they're sending like some pretty big, important dudes over. It's the technical term, big, important dudes. They're sending those guys over because they know there's going to be something that happens this weekend. And so the obvious thing is some kind of de-escalation in tariffs. To what level, who knows? But, anywhere between 25 and 60%, fine. Like, you could see that as being totally reasonable. Okay, they're doing that, but the market's rallied so strongly because Bessent's been hinting at this for the last, couple weeks. Maybe it's just all priced in. It's one possibility. Possibility number 2. Hey, markets have seen this stuff before back in, 2017, 2018. We got, daily updates on, trade deal with China and this and that. And market knows, okay, you're not going to get anything big and transformative this weekend. We're going to be cautious and see how things go. Another possibility. Possibility 3. Market looks at it and says, hey, China has a long history of stringing countries along in negotiations. Regardless of getting together, they're just trying to buy time and maybe nothing comes out of this. Okay, like legitimate possibility as well. I have no idea. I tend to lean towards you're probably going to get something that comes out of this because, again, you don't send Bessent and Greer over there just to have a cup of coffee with, their Chinese equivalent. That's you can call each other on the phone if you wanted to do that. So it seems to me that something is likely to get done. The questions are going to be the magnitude of it, the actual timing, and clearly not a full trade deal or anything like that. Those things don't happen in, a matter of weeks, but some kind of de-escalation is what I think I would be expecting to see out of this weekend. Your thoughts, Mark?
If your objective is to reduce the bilateral, the country-to-country deficit with China, you're probably going to need an enforceable agreement. We had one with them in, I think it was 2019. It might have been this latest.
We never enforced it.
Yeah, I'm looking at our goods deficit with China, and it went up. It's gone up virtually every year, dipped a little bit as...
No one enforced it. The Trump administration didn't. The Biden administration didn't. No one enforced
fundamentally, and I know I say this every time I'm on, so sorry in advance, but our trade deficit is a result of us not saving enough to satisfy investment opportunities here. We import foreign capital. The flip side to importing foreign capital is that we send dollars abroad when we buy foreign goods. So if you took China out of the equation completely, other lower cost providers of things we want to buy would step into that breach. And go ahead.
So all else being equal, yes. Yeah. I think the place where the Trump administration would say there's an issue, and where quite honestly I would agree, is the Chinese government does an awful lot of work to prevent their currency from appreciating, which in turn helps to encourage that overspending and undersaving by U.S. investors in a way, U.S. households.
It makes it easier for us to do that.
In a way where, hey, if the currency were more freely floating, you might not have the same level of deficit.
I still think because of our chronic undersaving, both as people and at the federal government level, that it wouldn't make much of a dent in the overall trade deficit. Bilaterally, you might be able to fix this. Because China is an Olympic trading cheater. The whole world agrees. And on top of that, there are probably national security reasons to clamp down on trade with China. I'm by no means in favor of the current regime, the current constellation of factors that result in the balance of trade with China that we have, though it doesn't keep me up at night either. What I'm getting at is if you're mad at the trade deficit overall, it's a savings problem. That's the only point I wanted to make.
So I'm very curious to see what we get out of this weekend, just because, again, even as I sit here and say, hey, there's probably going to be some kind of de-escalation, I might assign that like a 55 to 60% probability and like a 40%, like a 30% chance, hey, we had a productive talk, but we're not changing anything, and maybe a 10% chance, hey, things went really badly, like we're buckling down, like we're not, like, you know, that kind of talk. That, like, so I don't know exactly what's going to come out of it. I think the most likely thing is some kind of de-escalation, but is it to, 50% tariffs each way? Is it to 25? Is it effective Monday? Is it effective a month from now? Is it effective retroactively and all those tariffs are going to be, rebated? Like, who the heck knows? We'll have to see. Quick break here. When we come back, Wall Street Watch and Todd Lutsky joins us for Ask Todd.
Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @TFE Show. Breaking business news is always first, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Did you outgrow your timeshare and now you want out? But you can't. You can't sell it, and you can't get out of the contract. Imagine trying to get out of your mortgage. That's what a timeshare is. You can't just call up the bank and say, I don't want to pay it anymore. But we may be able to help you do just that. Listen, a timeshare maybe for you once was a great thing, but now you don't use it much. And they are not easy to get rid of. Plus, you do have to pay for it every month. Qualified timeshare owners can get out of their contract legally and permanently without ruining your credit or even filing bankruptcy. And imagine no more mortgage payment or fees. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline qualification line now. It's free to learn more.
800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. That's 800-455-7967. Paid for by Timeshare Defense.
There are critical mistakes you can make during the estate planning process that may have a damaging effect on your financial strategy. Cushing & Dolan's new guide is called Detour Ahead, Estate Planning Blunders to Avoid. Get yours today and make the right decisions to protect your assets. Call 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699 or request it online at LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
This is Michael Valila, Adjutant of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. The DAV of Massachusetts has helped me and countless others adjust to civilian life through a variety of incredible programs. Through our local Veterans Assistance Program, we provide necessary services to veterans and their communities, such as food shopping, landscaping, and companionship, but we need your support. You can help by making a donation today. Please visit dav5k.boston. That's dav5k.boston.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Estate and financial planning go hand in hand, and one of the most common ways to keep that bond secure is with a trust. Our new guide, called Trusts in Your Financial Plan, is available right now. In it, we'll discuss the various types of trusts that exist and how they might benefit your planning process. Trusts provide a number of different protections for your assets, including privacy, control, and tax efficiency. If you're retired or nearing retirement and have concerns about your financial strategy and whether or not a trust may help, call us today at 800-393-4001 and ask for your free guide called Trusts and Your Financial Plan. Learn about how a trust could make a difference for you and your family by calling 800-393-4001. That number again is 800-393-4001, or you can request the guide from ArmstrongAdvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
This is Tucker Silva of the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutsky with your Financial Exchange Quick Tip of the Day. And today, we're talking about the top estate planning mistakes to avoid. Todd, a lot of people create their estate plan, but there are some that don't actually transfer assets into it. Can you explain why this is such a big mistake?
Sure. I'm going to try to explain it both from a revocable and an irrevocable planning standpoint. With the revocable, if you don't put assets in there, you end up leaving them owned perhaps jointly if you're married, and designated beneficiaries and the like. But if everything goes to the spouse, when one dies, then you've completely avoided your estate plan. In other words, you've set your trust up, but you went around it by leaving everything to the spouse instead of going through it by funding the trust and cramming down the assets to shelter some from estate taxes on the first death, so there's less taxed on the second death. And ultimately, on the second death, if you don't plan, there could be a probate problem because everything would go to probate if it's in their own name. The other big reason is with an irrevocable trust, of course, not funding it also can result in estate tax problems by the same way it did with the revocable trust. But in addition to not funding them with the irrevocable, you don't even begin the 5-year waiting period to get the assets protected from the nursing home. So there's a much bigger problem not funding an irrevocable trust versus not funding a revocable trust. So make sure you fund your trust if you do your planning.
Well, luckily, Todd Lutsky and the estate planning experts at Cushing & Dolan have written a brand new guide that details the estate planning blunders to avoid. You can request this brand new guide by simply calling 866-848-5699, 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Time now for Wall Street Watch. A complete look at what's moving markets so far today, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Well, it's Fed Day and markets are trading modestly higher. While rates are expected to remain steady, investors will lock in on Fed Chairman Jerome Powell's press conference at 2:30, where he will speak to the central bank's insight on the economy. Right now, the Dow is up by just over 0.5%, S&P 500 up nearly 0.5% or 26 points, and the NASDAQ up by, you guessed it, 0.5% or 92 points. Russell 2000 is up by about 1/3%. 10-year Treasury yield down by 2 basis points, now at 4.29%, and crude oil down about 1/3%, trading just below $59 a barrel. Disney jumping by over 10% after the media and entertainment company beat quarterly earnings and revenue expectations while also raising its full-year earnings outlook. Furthermore, Disney agreed to partner with Miral to build a theme park and resort in Abu Dhabi. Meanwhile, Supermicro Computer missed quarterly expectations and offered weak guidance for the current quarter, sending shares in the server maker down by 3%. Sticking with that sector, where AMD shares are edging higher after the chipmaker posted better than expected first quarter earnings and guided for higher revenue this quarter. Elsewhere, Uber down by over 1% after the ride-sharing and food delivering company missed first quarter revenue expectations but did beat on earnings. EV maker Rivian cut its annual forecast for deliveries and raised its capital spending guidance, citing the impact of trade policy. That stock is up by about 0.5%. Wynn Resorts upgraded to buy from neutral at Bank of America, citing the company's casino project in the Middle East. Wynn's first quarter did reveal weak results in Macau. Las Vegas revenue also saw smaller declines. Wynn shares are down by about 0.3%. And Novo Nordisk up by 3% after the drug maker said it sees sales of its weight loss drug Wegovy growing in the second half of the year as compounded drugs are phased out. I'm Tucker Silva, and that's Wall Street Watch.
This is Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. If you have an existing estate plan or are in the market for one, Todd Lutsky is here to answer your questions and help you plan for later life. Ask Todd is presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 35 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Visit CushingDolan.com. Now, here's Todd Lutsky.
As promised, we're now joined by the one and only Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan. We call the segment Ask Todd for one reason and one reason only. It's your chance to ask Todd your estate planning questions. Phone lines are open. 888-205-2263 is the number to call. Remember, we only usually get through 2 to maybe 3 questions, so get calling early and often in order to be able to ask Todd your estate planning questions. That number is 888-205-2263. Again, it is 888-205-2263. 2263 to be able to ask Mr. Lutsky your estate planning questions. Todd, how are you doing today?
I am never better, and you?
I'm good.
Yeah?
So, you know how in some sports, after a game, you toss the ball out into the stands as kind of like a souvenir for a kid or something like that?
Yeah. Seen that.
Apparently, you're not supposed to do that in bowling.
Yeah, no. Definitely not
Yeah,
a good.
learn that one the hard way.
Yeah.
Todd, I want to talk to you about wills. Very basic estate planning document. What is the subset of the population that doesn't have any major issues using a will as their only estate plan? Who can get away with not doing any more advanced planning?
Wow. So I can tell you in my 30 years plus of estate planning that I don't think I've ever done a will-based plan. When I say a will-based plan, meaning no trust is involved with doing the will. I do wills all the time.
Sure.
But they're usually part of a bigger estate plan that includes a trust. And so I guess what I'm driving at is it's very rare, but I suppose if you're perhaps single and maybe have no concerns about estate taxes, so you're under the exemption, which is a lot for a lot of people. It's $2 million in mass, and don't forget $13 million federally, so that's not a big hurdle. Maybe the people you're leaving it to, I mean, it could be kids or no kids, but, maybe the people you're leaving it to, you just want them to have it outright. There's no reason to hold it back for any reason. And you don't mind probate, because a will goes to probate, then I guess you could get away with it. I guess you could probably avoid probate if you say, you know what, I'm going to have, I don't own any real estate, and I just have, I rent, and I have a bunch of investments that I could put a designated beneficiary on, like kids or nieces or nephews, what have you. Or I have my IRA, which also could have a designated beneficiary, life insurance, which could have a designated beneficiary. So as long as I own no real estate, and I don't mind if my beneficiaries, whoever they are, actually get the asset outright with no control, and I can put designated beneficiaries on everything to avoid probate, then I guess you can have a will. I say you can have a will, but guess what? The will won't be doing anything. It really won't be addressing anything because you've addressed all your assets with the designated beneficiary. But I guess you could get away with a will. But if you got a house and you want to avoid probate, then you're going to go to probate because you're not going to throw a kid's name on a house. So kind of hard to avoid probate on the house without a trust. So I guess I've answered it in a long-winded way of saying probably very few people.
Talking with Todd Lutsky from the law firm of Cushing & Dolan. If you've got a question that you want to ask about your estate plan, number to call is 888-205-2263. Again, 888-205-2263. We're going to take a quick break right now, but when we come back, going to get right to your questions with Todd. That phone number again is 888-205-2263. Quick break. Your questions with Todd are next.
Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky every Wednesday at 10:30, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. The United States Virgin Islands is consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, and recently, 2 of their beaches, Trunk Bay in St. John and Maggins Bay in St. Thomas, were voted a top 10 best beach in the Caribbean at the 2025 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards. From the pristine beaches to its world-class dining, rich history, incredible golf, and perfect weather, the USVI has everything you need to make memories that will last a lifetime. From the moment you arrive, you will fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or a family vacation, the U.S. Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next adventure. Go to visitusvi.com right now for more information and to book your trip. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Go to visitusvi.com today. That's visitusvi.com. Creating the right estate plan to help secure your future takes effort. Cushing & Dolan are experts in estate planning. Their new guide is called Detour Ahead, Estate Planning Blunders to Avoid. In it, you'll learn how to make the right decisions to always protect your assets while avoiding costly mistakes, any one of which could have a dramatic and damaging effect on your financial strategy. As an example, if you've created a trust more than 10 years ago and haven't updated it since, you're setting yourself up for problems. Don't take chances with the assets you've worked so hard to attain. Cushing & Dolan's new guide will help you address issues like this, so call right now, 866-848-5699, and ask for your copy of our new free guide called Detour Ahead, Estate Planning Blunders to Avoid. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online from their website, LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Estate and financial planning go hand in hand, and one of the most common ways to keep that bond secure is with a trust. Our new guide, called Trusts in Your Financial Plan, is available right now. In it, we'll discuss the various types of trusts that exist and how they might benefit your planning process. Trusts provide a number of different protections for your assets, including privacy, control, and tax efficiency. If you're retired or nearing retirement and have concerns about your financial strategy and whether or not a trust may help, call us today at 800-393-4001 and ask for your free guide called Trusts in Your Financial Plan. Learn about how a trust could make a difference for you and your family by calling 800-393-4001. That number again is 800-393-4001, or you can request the guide from ArmstrongAdvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services.
Environmental nonprofit Ocean River Institute is working with communities to tackle climate change with nature-based solutions that feature slowing water down and building more soil with grasses and plants. Research indicates that people acting in their own neighborhoods can build an inch of soil in a year and slow sea level rise down by as much as 25%. Please visit oceanriver.org for more information on opportunities to make a difference and go the distance for savvy stewardship of a greener and bluer planet Earth.
Is it a stroke? Even if you're not sure, act fast and call 911. Signs can include face drooping on one side, arm weakness, speech difficulty, or not making sense when talking. Time is critical. A stroke requires immediate medical care, which starts as soon as the ambulance arrives. So if you see any sign of stroke, act fast and call 911. Visit mass.gov/stroke, sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health.
You're listening to Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
All right, Todd, got a couple calls lined up for you. Let's go first to Casey in Andover. Casey, you're on with Todd Lutsky.
Hi, Todd. I have a question that I've been listening to for a long time, and I was talking to our kids about our trusts, and they asked, and I'm like, I have no clue, so I'll go to the expert.
Okay.
We've set up a trust, funded it. What does it mean to them to avoid probate? How do they avoid probate? Do they have to do anything?
So is the trust revocable or irrevocable? Just curious.
Irrevocable.
Okay.
Excuse me, it's revocable. Sorry, it's revocable.
It's revocable. So here's what the basic question is what does it mean to children, and why do parents like yourselves and so many others want to avoid it? Of course, you guys will be dead, so it won't matter for you. But for the kids, probate is really a long process, right? It's a year-long process at a minimum, number one. Number two, it's going to be costly, right? You got to hire a lawyer. You don't have to, but mostly you're going to hire a lawyer. And it's not the probate fees that you care about. It's the legal fees to take you through this process. So you've got that. Everything is also exposed to creditors. Any creditor that you had when you died outstanding can file a claim against the estate, the probate estate, to get those assets. So first, a probate asset is any asset that's in your own name when you die and has no designated beneficiary. So that's a probate asset. So obviously, if it's in the trust, it avoids probate. All the trust assets just go according to the terms of the trust. So first, you got to file the will, number one. So if you got a bunch of bank accounts in your name and the kids want to go get that money from the bank, they can't do it, right? They walk into the bank banks say, we can't talk to you. You got to get appointed. So first, you got to file the will. Then you got to give a letter to all the heirs at law to notify them that you're applying for to be executor or personal representative of the estate. They have 30 days to object. If they don't object, then you wait for the court to give you a return day. Then you go to the court. Well, you don't. The lawyer's doing all this for you. And then you go to the court, and the court finally knights you with this personal representative appointment. And then they can take, finally, after 60 to 90 days perhaps, you can take that certificate of appointment and the death certificate, and you can walk into the bank, financial institution, etc., where the assets are, and then magically they will finally talk to you and tell you what's in the account, and you can access the account and move it. So that's just the beginning. Then they have to file an inventory. An inventory is every asset that you died in the probate world listed with the value next to it, filed at the court. Guess what? Anybody can walk down there and look at that anytime they want, neighbors, whatever. Then as time goes on, they have to open up an account in the name of the estate. They got to put all that money from the estate in there. Then you got to do an accounting at the end of the, you got to do an accounting and then a final accounting as to what goes in, what goes out of this bucket of money, so to speak. And of course, all the creditors can file claims. I mean, it just goes on and on. I probably have said enough to say, you know what? I don't want that, right? And that's just really the tip of the probate iceberg. So I would avoid it. You have a trust. Make sure your trust is funded. If your assets are in there, then you're not going to have any of that. They're going to come in. They're going to sit down. The lawyer's going to open a book and tell them right at their table, here's all your assets and here's what we're going to do with them. No filing, no waiting for the court, no appointment. Hopefully that's helpful. Folks, the guide we're getting is really a guide for everybody this month. Potholes to avoid. If you've not done your planning, it's going to tell you things like Chuck asked. Don't rely on a will. Don't think that I don't have enough assets to do estate planning. Oh, I have no kids. I don't need to do planning. Oh, I have everything in a nominee realty trust. I'm all set. Folks, things like that are not true, right? Get the guide, learn why you need an estate plan if you don't think you have one or if you don't think you need one. And for folks who have it, what happens if I move on a relocate? What if my spouse dies? What if I haven't looked at my plan in 15 years? What, events that happen during life. There might be better ways to do your plan or look them over or tweak them. So for people who haven't done their plan or who have done their planning, there's something in here for you as well. Call and get the guide, Potholes to Avoid in the Estate Planning World, 866-848-5699 or legalexchangeshow.com. Again, 866-848-5699 or legalexchangeshow.com.
Todd, I got another one here for you. Let's go to Bill in Woods Hole. Bill, what's your question for Todd Lutsky?
I'm calling on behalf of a cousin, elderly person, Florida resident, has property there, also has substantial property, a business in Falmouth. Does she need multiple trusts, different states? How does that work?
So a couple of things. When you say property in Falmouth, do you mean real estate in Falmouth?
Yes.
Okay. So, again, you'd have to add up the value if she's single at this point. I don't think multiple trusts is definitely what I'd be worried about here. Again, I don't know what her overall value is, but the real question that's being begged here is that, we have a non-resident of Mass who has property in Massachusetts, but is a non-resident. And so is Massachusetts going to even bother taxing her, right? Again, the point of being a Florida resident is, hey, they don't have any death tax in Florida. And so if they don't have any death tax in Florida, then I shouldn't have to worry. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. So she can have one trust. I'm okay with that. But the real estate in Massachusetts has the power to tax non-residents on tangible property in Massachusetts, real estate. And the way they do it is, let's just say for fun that the property in Falmouth is $2 million, the property in Florida is $2 million, and the total estate is $4 million. What they would do is they would actually take the $2 million Mass property as the numerator, divide by the $4 million Mass and Florida property, and get 50% as a ratio. And then they calculate the tax on the $4 million in Mass, and they multiply it by 50%. Well, I don't want to do that. How can we avoid that problem? So establish your residency in Florida like she did, but then make sure the property in Mass goes into an LLC. If it goes into an LLC, then you've converted the property from real estate or a tangible asset to an intangible asset, and Massachusetts cannot tax non-residents on intangible assets, and then she will completely avoid taxation in Massachusetts. And because she's a Florida resident, there's no state Florida death tax, and I'm assuming she's under $13.9 million, so we've got no federal tax. And I think otherwise, all these assets, Florida and the stock in the LLC, can be owned in one trust. So that's the answer.
Todd, when it comes to an estate plan, we got about a minute or so left. How often should someone review that plan to see if it needs to be updated?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And like we said, the guide is really about issues for people who have already done their plan as much as for people who have not done their plan. And so people who have done their plan, you know, I tell you, it depends on the size of your estate, but you should look at your estate plan maybe at least, for sure, every 10 to 15 years at a minimum. But I would look at it not just because of the time that gone by. Now, if you are a larger estate, let's say you're over 10 million, right, or 15 million, you might want to look at it. You might want to just call your estate planning attorney even, once a year at the end of the year just to say, I'm checking in. Do I need, how have the laws changed? Do I need to make any gifting ideas? Just to say hello and check on it. So that might be a little more often when your estate's larger. But when it's not as large, I think that's probably a good number. And there's also other reasons to do it, folks. You could have anything that could go wrong. You could have a divorce. You could change locations, like this client that called. Changing locations is a reason to look at your estate plan. So for Bill, for that cousin, if you relocate, call your attorney and discuss your estate plan. If you've done it, that is a red flag.
Mr. Lutsky, thank you so much for the time today. We appreciate you joining us.
Always a pleasure.
This has been Ask Todd on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. Ask Todd with Todd Lutsky has been presented by Cushing & Dolan, serving Massachusetts and New England for more than 30 years, helping families with estate and tax planning, Medicaid planning, and probate law. Call 800-393-4001 or visit CushingDolan.com. The views expressed in this segment are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Armstrong Advisory does not provide any legal or tax advice. Please consult with your legal or tax advisor on such matters. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Still a lot to come in hour 2 of the show, including we're going to be touching on oil prices, why they've been sliding recently. Also, some cases of things that are a little bit odd that we're seeing in the auto industry in response to tariffs. Also, we're going to be talking a little bit about companies and how they are responding as far as their capital expenditure plans. Specifically, hey, CapEx as far as investment into the company versus are they redirecting that towards stock buybacks, dividends, and things like that. All that and more coming up, including why Mark Zuckerberg thinks that your best friends in the future will be AI. Sounds great to me. Can't wait.
Cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of women,
taking the lives of 1 in 3.
That's more than all forms of cancer combined.
For too long, heart disease and stroke have taken the lives of the women we love.
But we're not giving up because we have something better,
stronger, more powerful.
We have each other.
When we come together and go red,
the more power we have against our greatest health threat.
Visit GoRedForWomen.org today to learn more.
As a busy mom to 4 kids, my to-do list is full.
Trying to fit in exercise, eating right, and prioritizing self-care can feel next to impossible.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has easy tips, tools, and information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
So to all the moms, the aunts, grandmothers, and amazing women out there doing it all,
visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
You take care of them, Go Red for Women will take care of you.
Are you over the age of 50? Want peace of mind and financial security for your family? Here's an important message to you from Senior Care USA. The average funeral now costs over $10,000. That leaves your loved ones the burden of paying your debts and funeral costs. Our plans start as low as $1 per day and will pay your family up to $30,000 to help pay for your funeral and other expenses. There are no medical exams. Your rates will never increase, and your plan cannot be canceled, regardless of your medical conditions, as long as you make your premium payments. Get up to $30,000 in final expense insurance. Call now for free information. Just answer a few simple questions and get approved right over the phone in just a few minutes. Call right now.
Call 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. 800-378-3818. That's 800-378-3818. Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
This is the Money Matters Radio Network. WBNW 1120 AM and W275 CM FM. Concord, Boston. The Money Matters Radio Network.
Did you outgrow your timeshare and now you want out? But you can't. You can't sell it, and you can't get out of the contract. Imagine trying to get out of your mortgage. That's what a timeshare is. You can't just call up the bank and say, I don't want to pay it anymore. But we may be able to help you do just that. Listen, a timeshare maybe for you once was a great thing, but now you don't use it much. And they are not easy to get rid of. Plus, you do have to pay for it every month. Qualified timeshare owners can get out of their contract legally and permanently without ruining your credit or even filing bankruptcy. And imagine, no more mortgage payment or fees. Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline qualification line now. It's free to learn more.
800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. 800-455-7967. That's 800-455-7967. Paid for by Timeshare Defense.
The United States Virgin Islands is consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations. And recently, 2 of their beaches, Trunk Bay in St. John and Maggins Bay in St. Thomas, were voted a top 10 best beach in the Caribbean at the 2025 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards. From the pristine beaches to its world-class dining, rich history, incredible golf, and perfect weather, the USVI has everything you need to make memories that will last a lifetime. From the moment you arrive, you will fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or a family vacation, the U.S. Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next adventure. Go to visitusvi.com right now for more information and to book your trip. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Go to visitusvi.com today. That's visitusvi.com.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESI is there as your partner. the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod is perfect for your next New England vacation. Located just off Route 6 in Hyannis, the resort has everything you need to enjoy an incredible week with your family or a quick weekend getaway. Along with first-class accommodations and food, Fins Up Water Park is packed with aquatic adventures that will keep the kids entertained for hours. The summer season is coming soon, so make plans today for a fun-filled vacation at Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod. For more information and to book your trip, visit MargaritavilleResortsCapeCod.com.
Hi, it's Chuck and Mike from the Armstrong Advisory Group, and we have a guide available this month titled Trusts in Your Financial Plan. Mike, a lot of times when we talk about financial planning, it's with the idea of having your money available to you to use when you need to use it. How do trusts work to kind of keep that idea going, not just for yourself, but also for the next generation as well?
Sure, and it doesn't always need to be the next generation, because how many times have you heard somebody say, hey, look, I raised my kids, they're in a good spot, I want the less check I write to bounce. I'm spending this money. But, there can be situations where trust can benefit even a married couple in the event of a lawsuit or a nursing home that's unexpected, especially if there's a big age gap. That can be critical. But for next generation planning, it gets much more common, and especially in the New England area where most states have an estate tax, there's a lot that can be done from a multi-generational planning perspective to, if not eliminate those taxes, at least mitigate them to a large degree. I mean, you think about here in New England, the value of your primary residence, which you sell, it might not be subject to capital gains tax, but if you die, is most certainly subject to estate taxes. There's a lot that can be done in the way of trust planning.
Our guide this month is titled Trusts in Your Financial Plan, and you can request it by calling 800-393-4001. Again, that number is 800-393-4001, and the guide this month is titled Trusts in Your Financial Plan and details a number of ideas about how you can fit trusts into your financial plan.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. The Financial Exchange is produced by Money Matters Radio and is hosted by employees of the Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. All opinions expressed are solely those of the hosts, do not reflect the opinions of Armstrong Advisory or anyone else. Investments can lose money. This program does not offer any specific financial or investment advice. Please consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong Advisory and the advertisers heard on this program do not endorse each other or their services. Armstrong and Money Matters Radio do not compensate each other for referrals and are not affiliated. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Marc Fandetti. Your exclusive look at business and financial news affecting your day, your city, your world. Stay informed and up to date about economic and market trends, plus breaking business news every day. The Financial Exchange is a proud partner of the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. Help us support our great American heroes by visiting dav5k.boston and making a donation today. This is the Financial Exchange with Chuck Zodda and Marc Fandetti.
Hour 2 on the Financial Exchange. It is Chuck, Mark, and Tucker with you. Tucker, I still can't. My red light won't go on this thing.
Yeah, I'll do that from time to time.
Yeah. So
next segment will probably be on.
That sounds great, but Mark, yours never goes on. Oh no, hey, yours is white. Didn't even know that. First time I looked at it. In any case, it is the three of us talking about money and stuff, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 148 points right now. The S&P is flat. The NASDAQ down 49. Most of that weakness in the NASDAQ and even the S&P, the S&P was up about maybe 0.5% until the last 20 minutes or so. And about 20 minutes ago, Apple, I don't know where this was being talked about, but I see it on a bunch of alerts and stuff here. Apple said that searches in their web browser, so if you're in Safari and you just type something in, like instead of the address, but just, whatever, normally that goes to Google.
This was about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah. Normally that goes to Google. Apple said searches in browser fell for the first time ever in April. So they've never had a month where they saw fewer searches coming through. Apple exploring adding AI search to its browser and believes Perplexity and Anthropic could be options. So you promptly pull up a chart of Google stock, which was basically trading between like 163 and 163.70 for the first hour and 45 minutes of trading. It lost 5% in 15 minutes because Google has a huge search deal with Apple where they basically pay in order to get a bunch of search volume coming from Apple over to them. So the reading the tea leaves is, hey, if Apple is going to no longer accept that payment from Google to be the exclusive search provider, does this mean that Google has less traffic coming through and in turn, it impacts their business? So that's the read through there. Other things that we are seeing in markets, the 10-year Treasury, not a ton of movement down, almost 4 basis points to 4.279%, so moving a little bit lower, but nothing huge. Oil, West Texas Intermediate, down 38 cents a barrel to 58.71. AAA national average for gas prices moving down a touch, so maybe finally starting to pick up some of these lower prices now that you have some refineries coming back online after spring maintenance. And so you've got the AAA national average for gas prices at 315 and 4/10, down 0.4 of a cent overnight. And gold is down 29.90 an ounce to 33.92 and 90 cents. Mark, I want to touch on this falling oil prices piece just because, look, you do have a situation right now where oil prices, again, not gas prices, but oil prices have come down significantly in the past, call it month and a half, 2 months now. I'm just pulling up the chart so I can quote it accurately. Actually, it's really since the beginning of the year. You go back to January 13th, 14th. West Texas Intermediate is sitting there right around $79 per barrel. Today, you've been under $60 a barrel for the last 3 days of trading. It'll be 4 if we close in this range today. So you've seen oil prices come down 25%. And a couple things that I know about oil prices. Typically, there's 2 different ways that you can look at this. The first is falling oil prices are normally a sign of weakening demand that can be concerning. We saw this, you look at, a number of different situations where this happens, and in each one it's been kind of concerning for the U.S. economy generally. The other reason that you can have oil prices falling, and remember the other side of supply and demand is supply, is because countries that typically restrict their production go through a huge boost in production. We saw this back in 2015 where Russia basically said, screw you, Texas producers, we're just going to pump and put you out of business, which is exactly what they did, which is why most oil companies now are really skittish about deploying more capacity, and they're very measured with their capital expenditures because any oil executive who's in business today survived the 2010s and doesn't want to go through a repeat of that. So when I see oil prices down into the 60s, the 2 things that I think about are, number one, hey, is there something bad out there that, oil's telling us that about the economy that we just aren't seeing yet? And number 2, is someone else pumping a whole bunch of oil that is, basically trying to just cram supply through at the expense of U.S. producers? In this case, Mark, it certainly is the latter because we've seen OPEC Plus with back-to-back monthly increases in production. On the other side, you say, hey, there's definitely some concern about where the economy could be going, and maybe oil sniffing some of that out as well. Your thoughts?
Well, it's good news for inflation in the short term.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Price of oil, headline inflation. Some of it will seep into core, but mostly headline. Now, there may be offsetting effects from things like used car prices that you mentioned in the last hour, but it is unequivocally good in the very short term. Again, that will the Fed respond to that by being more inclined to ease? Probably not, because they know underlying or trend inflation is different from headline. That's why we look at core, which mechanically strips out food and energy, and preferably other measures that mechanically filter out any outlier month to month. So there's that angle. Good for inflation in the short term. This is growing inflation expectations, as we talked about, are a problem for the Fed. The problem with this economically is that we are a net producer of oil. We depend on it for economic growth. The net effect of a big drop in oil, the firms who have a good track record at estimating, employing big sophisticated models to estimate the effects of things like the drop we've experienced recently, think the net effect will be negative. So you can't be energy independent and have cheap oil. Those two goals are in tension. Most of our oil, 65% or so of the 12 or so million barrels a day that we produce, comes from tight spaces. The only way to get at it is through fracking, shale oil.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So you had Diamondback, you had Tariff yesterday telling us they're going to cut capital expenditures. I'll say again, you probably can't be energy independent because of the prevalence of shale oil and the importance of shale oil, which I'll just use fracking as a byword for that process, to our oil output and the break even, so to speak, of shale, which I think everybody agrees is higher than the current price of oil.
Now, the other piece on this that is interesting to watch then, and particularly relevant for us here in the Northeast, is what does this mean for nat gas prices? Because one of basically the byproducts of fracking is that there's a ton of nat gas that is produced by it. It's why the United States is one of the largest, it might actually be the largest natural gas producer in the world. Let me just pull it up I just want to make sure that I'm quoting this correctly. Yeah, so the U.S. is the largest natural gas producer in the world. And by the way, it's not even close. Russia is the next closest and runs about 30% behind us. The next closest country in terms of natural gas production is Iran, which is about 25% of U.S. production. So the U.S. produces a ton of nat gas. The country that's up and coming there is Qatar, just because of how their reserves are distributed there, but they're still at this point, 18, 19% of U.S. production. It's just a fraction of the size. But here's the rub, is if U.S. producers start to pull back from CapEx and new fracking activity and things like that, it does mean, unfortunately, that you don't get that natural gas replaced by production elsewhere, because if you look at Saudi Arabia, just as an example, Saudi Arabia produces about as much oil as the United States. Pretty close. Like, depending on their quotas in any given month, they're within sniffing distance. They only produce about 12, 13% as much nat gas as the U.S. does because of the way the deposits are formed and, created basically under the ground. They don't have as much nat gas that gets produced, and so a barrel of oil that's produced from the Saudis does not produce as much nat gas byproduct that you can then sell as energy.
Okay.
So the upshot of this is that even though oil prices have been, falling pretty significantly here, and just as an example, if you go back, I'm just looking back in time, the last time that we had oil prices in the $60 range for West Texas Intermediate. Hold, please. I got to go back further on the chart than I thought. The last time we were here on the chart was March of 2021. So you got to go back 4 years ago to the last time we saw oil in this range. If you were to do the exact same thing on nat gas right now is $3.46 per whatever it is, like million BTUs or whatever the heck. I don't even know what they measure it in because it's too many letters to understand. So you go back and look, nat gas at that same point in time was $2.40. So nat gas prices are 50% higher, and they're basically, nat gas is much more volatile because of how it's consumed in heating and stuff like that. So you see big, seasonal effects, and depending on, winters and everything, this can throw it off. But nat gas prices have been moving up in the last few weeks, not down. And so this is one of the things that is important for people in the Northeast where our show's based out of. Number one, if you heat your home with nat gas, it's not great news on that front. Number two, From an electricity perspective, a lot of the power consumed here is nat gas, specifically LNG, that has to be shipped in because we don't allow the pipelines to be built, yada, yada. But as those prices go up, not good for electric prices. So even if you're seeing lower prices at the pump, it's not going to necessarily feed through into your electric bill because nat gas moves the opposite way as U.S. production most often.
Makes me wonder about the net. Yeah, that you kind of blew my mind. Makes me wonder about the net inflation impact then of all this.
It's more of an issue in the Northeast because of how we get our electricity and produce our heat.
Yeah, okay.
Most of the country does not use nat gas or oil heat. Just not something they do. Like you try to explain oil heat to someone from Tennessee, they're like, "You do what? You got a tank of what in your house?"
Yeah.
They look at you like you got 8 heads. Like they're like, "What's heating oil? Like is that what you put in like your engine?" Like no, that's no. So we're kind of unique up here. You know, we're a little different. But in any case, that's nat gas and oil. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, trivia's next.
The global trade war is in full swing. How long will it last is anyone's guess. Keep it here for the most up-to-date information plus breaking news every day, right here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Estate and financial planning go hand in hand, and one of the most common ways to keep that bond secure is with a trust. Our new guide, called Trusts in Your Financial Plan, is available right now. In it, we'll discuss the various types of trusts that exist and how they might benefit your planning process. Trusts provide a number of different protections for your assets, including privacy, control, and tax efficiency. If you're retired or nearing retirement and have concerns about your financial strategy and whether or not a trust may help, call us today at 800-393-4001 and ask for your free guide called Trusts and Your Financial Plan. Learn about how a trust could make a difference for you and your family by calling 800-393-4001. That number again is 800-393-4001, or you can request the guide from ArmstrongAdvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. The United States Virgin Islands is consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations. And recently, 2 of their beaches, Trunk Bay in St. John and Maggins Bay in St. Thomas, were voted a top 10 best beach in the Caribbean at the 2025 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards. From the pristine beaches to its world-class dining, rich history, incredible golf, and perfect weather, the USVI has everything you need to make memories that will last a lifetime. From the moment you arrive, you will fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or a family vacation, the U.S. Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next adventure. Go to visitusvi.com right now for more information and to book your trip. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Go to visitusvi.com today. That's visitusvi.com. Creating the right estate plan to help secure your future takes effort. Cushing & Dolan are experts in estate planning. Their new guide is called Detour Ahead, Estate Planning Blunders to Avoid. In it, you'll learn how to make the right decisions to always protect your assets while avoiding costly mistakes, any one of which could have a dramatic and damaging effect on your financial strategy. As an example, if you've created a trust more than 10 years ago and haven't updated it since, you're setting yourself up for problems. Don't take chances with the assets you've worked so hard to attain. Cushing & Dolan's new guide will help you address issues like this. So call right now, 866-848-5699, and ask for your copy of our new free guide called Detour Ahead, Estate Planning Blunders to Avoid. That's 866-848-5699, or request it online from their website, LegalExchangeShow.com. The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Is it a stroke? Even if you're not sure, act fast and call 911. Signs can include face drooping on one side, arm weakness, speech difficulty, or not making sense when talking. Time is critical. A stroke requires immediate medical care, which starts as soon as the ambulance arrives. So if you see any sign of stroke, act fast and call 911. Visit mass.gov/stroke, sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health.
Here at the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we are committed to all students not only attending, but succeeding at school. Your presence is powerful. Share why you attend at doe.mass.edu.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Find daily interviews and full shows of the Financial Exchange on our YouTube page. Like us on YouTube and get caught up on anything and everything you might have missed. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
This segment of the Financial Exchange is brought to you in part by Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod in Hyannis. Looking for a great vacation spot? Look no further than Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod. Located just off Route 6, Margaritaville Resort Cape Cod is perfect for a weekend getaway or fun-filled family vacation. You'll enjoy first-class accommodations and dining, our incredible Fins Up water park, and of course the gorgeous pageantry of the Cape. Visit Margaritaville Resort's CapeCod.com for reservations and more information. Time for trivia here on the Financial Exchange. And on this day back in 1867, Alfred Nobel patented his most famous invention. Years later, Nobel, who was ashamed of his invention, created the Nobel Peace Prizes, including the Nobel Peace Prize, Trivia question today: what was Alfred Nobel's most famous invention? Once again, what was Alfred Nobel's most famous invention? Be the third person today to text us at 617-362-1385 with the correct answer, and you win a brand new Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. Once again, the third correct response to text us at 617-362-1385 will win that t-shirt. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
Couple different pieces related to auto sales to touch on here. So the really interesting thing here is when you talk about the automaker that imports the most vehicles into the U.S. for sale, it's not Toyota, it's not Hyundai, it's not Honda, it's not Volkswagen, it's General Motors. Nearly half of the vehicles that GM sold in the U.S. last year, about 1.23 million cars, were built abroad, according to research from Global Data. And most of their most affordable models are built overseas simply because even when you're shipping the thing, I guess, across, a big old ocean, it's still cheaper to build it somewhere else with lower labor costs, ship it across the ocean, and then it ends up on U.S. shores. So the Chevy Trax and the Buick Envista, they're both made in Korea, as an example, and they get shipped over to the United States. So now you've got these 25% auto tariffs that are in place, and potentially some other stuff that before they did away with the stacking of parts tariffs and things like that and gave some waivers, you potentially had even some higher costs that were coming through. But GM's in this position where they're like, hey, we moved some production of cheap models overseas. We still make, a lot of the really expensive stuff here. But what do we do with this? Because we don't really know how to get the prices to add up to where it's profitable for us and buyable for the consumer that wants to buy these cars.
I don't know how you plan as an executive. I don't know how you plan for the short term or the long term, given the fluid, shall we say, state of trade policy. I just don't know how you plan. And
it's kind of wild.
Yeah, it is. It's sad because in the long term we'll be worse unless we clean up our act here, and maybe there is some grand strategy being executed that we just don't see. Well, I'll give the White House some of the benefit of the doubt, even though I'm reluctant to based on what we've seen so far.
Sure.
We may come out of this with a more favorable arrangement with, say, China, as we talked about in the last hour, even though that won't reduce the overall deficit. That is a symptom of a savings deficit, not of any one particular country cheating, but we'll let them have the win there. Again, the bigger problem is if the rules of the game keep changing, there will be lower investment, there will be lower growth, full stop. Maybe you like the idea of tariffs. I would say that's misguided. No one who's ever looked at them in any era has concluded anything other than they benefit a very small number of people and they hurt everybody else. And you can already see that playing out here.
Looking at one other data point for the automotive sector, probably the first really negative data point that I've seen in a while for EVs, where, look, EV sales growth had been slowing for much of the last year or two, but it was still growing, just not as fast as, not as quickly as when all these companies were making EV investments and saying they were going to have 1 billion different models of EVs. This is a real problem here, the data that we saw in April. Sales of EVs in the U.S. fell by 5% for the month, while the broader market for car sales grew by 10%. So this is something where you say, hey, if this continues, it represents a real problem for companies that are still making a bunch of EVs or trying to expand production of them. And it also gets at why, hey, beyond, just what we're seeing from a tariff perspective, some of the places where companies are deciding to pull back production now is in the EV space, because the demand now does appear to be, at least for 1 month, declining relative to the rest of the auto market right now. And that's something that was not true the last couple of years. Even with slowing growth, it was still growing. This kind of a pretty big red flag for EVs if it were to continue. Quick break here. When we come back, trivia answers right after this.
Bringing the latest financial news straight to your radio every day. It's the Financial Exchange on the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
As a busy mom to 4 kids, my to-do list is full.
Trying to fit in exercise, eating right, and prioritizing self-care can feel next to impossible.
While we can't add more hours to the day, we do have a great resource to help.
Go Red for Women has easy tips, tools, and information to help you and your family live a healthier life.
So to all the moms, the aunts, grandmothers, and amazing women out there doing it all,
visit goredforwomen.org/momlife today.
You take care of them, Go Red for Women will take care of you.
It happens all over Massachusetts.
Can you tie my shoes?
In every home and every community.
Be careful on your bike.
Learning can happen anytime, anywhere.
We'll see you at practice this weekend.
And no matter how learning takes place in your family's life, DESE is there as your partner. The Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Never stop learning. Find out more at mass.gov/back-to-school.
Sponsored by the Massachusetts Department for Elementary and Secondary Education.
The United States Virgin Islands is consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations. And recently, 2 of their beaches, Trunk Bay in St. John and Maggins Bay in St. Thomas, were voted a top 10 best beach in the Caribbean at the 2025 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards. From the pristine beaches to its world-class dining, rich history, incredible golf, and perfect weather, the USVI has everything you need to make memories that will last a lifetime. From the moment you arrive, you will fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or a family vacation, the U.S. Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next adventure. Go to visitusvi.com right now for more information and to book your trip. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Go to visitusvi.com today. That's visitusvi.com.
A solid financial plan has many layers, and trusts are often a core piece. Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Understanding the various kinds of trusts that exist can be extremely beneficial to your strategy. If you're retired or nearing retirement age, a trust may help you with a wide range of issues, such as asset protection, tax efficiency, and avoiding probate. Call us today at 800-393-4001 and ask for our new guide called Trusts and Your Financial Plan. We'll discuss a number of different trusts and the areas in which they may help and how to determine which one may be right for you. Even if you already have a trust in place, this guide can provide a description of certain issues that may arise and could help you decide if changes are needed. Call us today at 800-393-4001 and get your guide today. Or you can request the guide online at armstrongadvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. services.
This is Tucker Silva of the Financial Exchange Show, and I'm joined today by estate planning attorney Todd Lutsky with your Financial Exchange Quick Tip of the Day. And today we're talking about the top estate planning mistakes to avoid. Todd, what is the downside of adding your kids to your accounts or adding their names to your real estate deeds as a joint owner? Won't this avoid probate?
You're absolutely right. It would avoid probate, but there are better ways to avoid probate than just doing something simple, right? Simple isn't always better. Throwing a name on an account or adding a designated beneficiary or a joint owner on a piece of property might not be the best way to go. Here's the problem. If you name one of your children as a joint owner and you have 3 children and you put that child on just because it's convenient and they're geographically close to you, well, you could be accidentally disinheriting your other children because this property, this asset will only go to that child. That child doesn't have to give it to the other kids. So that's a problem. And if you put your name, if you add a child's name to your real estate, now you're exposing it to that child's creditors, that child's potential divorces. That's never good. And plus, you've lost control over it. If you try to sell it, you need that kid's permission, and half the money would go to that kid. Please, folks, set up a trust, fund your trust much better than just trying to do it shorthanded and just give away assets or adding names to accounts.
Todd Lutsky and the estate planning experts at Cushing & Dolan have written a brand new guide that details the estate planning blunders to avoid. You can request this brand new guide by calling 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699, or you can request it from their website, legalexchangeshow.com.
The proceeding was paid for, and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing and Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated. Text us 617-362-1385 with your comments and questions about today's show, and let us know what you think about the stories we're covering. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
Trivia question today was, what was Alfred Nobel's most famous invention? That would be dynamite. Peter from Yarmouth, Maine is our winner today, taking home a brand new Financial Exchange Show t-shirt. Congrats to Peter, and we play trivia every day here on the Financial Exchange. See complete contest rules at financialexchangeshow.com.
Piece in the Wall Street Journal. It's titled, "The High Schoolers with $70,000 a Year Job Offers." Who are they, Mark, and why is a high school junior getting offered a job?
Because they have skills. They have skills that you typically learn as an apprentice with one of the trade unions. To me, that's the takeaway here.
Still not enough people fill in the trades, especially in the place that's really interesting to me is we talk occasionally about Electric Boat down in Connecticut. And the thing that is particularly challenging if you're trying to hire tradespeople to work there is, look, not only do you have to have the skill to be able to work on these boats, you got to be able to pass a really tough background check because you are working on nuclear-powered submarines, and obviously this makes you not just like a threat for, it's not just, hey, like, did you smoke marijuana ever, but it's, you are, potentially a target for foreign intelligence agencies to try to recruit you to, bring information to another country. So you need to have people that are not going to, potentially be compromised in any way that would lead to them sharing information with a foreign adversary. So I also find it really interesting, not quite as, the same magnitude, but one of the hardest jobs to hire for. You ever go to the airport?
Yes.
You ever see a restaurant there?
These questions are getting harder at some point.
I know.
Okay.
You ever see a restaurant there?
Yes, sir, I have.
Do you ever order from a restaurant there?
Yes, I have.
And do you ever see a person who brings you the food from that restaurant?
Typically, yeah.
That's a really hard job to hire for because, again, there's a background check that has to be done for someone who has to work inside airport security, and those jobs pay a lot better than, if you go to a Wendy's in an airport, you're not getting paid Wendy's wages typically because there's a smaller subset of people that can pass the background check and still work in that role.
Okay.
So, again, getting back to the issue talked about in this piece, we still have a huge shortage of basically tradespeople in any kind of trade, whether you're talking about plumbers and electricians, whether you're talking about, even truck drivers with the qualifications to be able to transport hazardous materials, like hazmat qualifications as well in those situations. There's a ton of stuff that people just have kind of pushed by the wayside as far as, I'll let someone else do that. And it can make for really fantastic careers, especially for people who are not built to just be sitting in an office all day looking at screens like you and I do. There are plenty of ways to make money in this world that you can go out and figure it out if you're hungry for it. And in particular, in the trades, we still have a huge dearth, a huge shortage of people going into these businesses just because they've been neglected for so long. These skills have just not been developed across the last couple of generations.
It's hard work. It's demanding physically.
It's not easy,
It's demanding intellectually and professionally. You have to keep up with the latest techniques. So they are consequently well compensated, but it's not easy to get to the point where you're considered a master in whatever your field happens to be.
The United States Virgin Islands is consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations, and recently 2 of their beaches, Trunk Bay in St. John and Megan's Bay in St. Thomas, were voted a top 10 best beach in the Caribbean at the 2025 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards. From the pristine beaches to its world-class dining, rich history, incredible golf, and perfect weather, the USVI has everything you need to make memories that will last a lifetime. From the moment you arrive, you'll fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or a family vacation, the U.S. Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next adventure. Go to visitusvi.com right now for more information and to book your trip. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Go to visitusvi.com today. That's visitusvi.com.
Piece in Financial Times, U.S. companies plot $500 billion share buyback spree. They're plotting, Mark. They're not just planning it.
You gotta love.
They're plotting.
You gotta
it.
love
it's something sinister.
The Financial Times. Do they call it a scheme? They use scheme differently than we do as well. I'm surprised they didn't call it a scheme.
What do you make of this?
Buybacks are an important source of returns for shareholders. S&P companies bought back on the public market, so they take cash from the balance sheet. They buy outstanding stock. They bought back about $1 trillion in stock last year. S&P 500 companies did. If you just divide that into total market cap of about $50 trillion as of last year end, you get a buyback yield of 1/50 or 2%. So 2% of the 27% the S&P returned last year, somewhere in the high 20s. That's your total return. Part of that is dividends, a paltry part, 1.5, rounding up a little bit, I think. 2 percentage points of that return you got last year was from share buybacks. It's become, since the 90s especially, because of changes in regulation and investor preferences, I think, have become an increasingly important source of shareholder returns.
And in this environment where, hey, maybe you've had your stock sell off a little bit, you're trying to figure out what your CapEx plans are going to be, maybe you got a little bit of extra cash that's floating around, and you say, okay, we'll up our buyback for this quarter.
That makes sense.
You're not committing to doing it permanently. It's not like a dividend where if you cut it, people really notice or anything like that. And so I think in looking at this, if companies aren't entirely sure what to do, but they don't want to be hoarding cash, they can say, look, we're not going to commit to the CapEx because we don't know what the investment picture looks like, but our stock's down 10%. Okay, we'll authorize like an extra little buyback just because we want to get that cash back to shareholders.
Yeah, I guess it's bittersweet for shareholders. It's obviously welcome because it boosts return. It reduces the number of shares outstanding. It thus increases earnings per share, which all else equal should increase share price. All else equal is a very important caveat there. But at the same time, as you said, Chuck, it's companies acknowledging we don't have a higher or best use to which to put this capital. That means lower, arguably, again, all else equal, long-term growth in EPS, earnings per share.
The other thing that I will point out is this is happening against the backdrop of, do you remember back in the in 2022 as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a 1% buyback tax now that's in place.
Yeah, I hate it, of course, but yeah. I know you weren't asking for editorializing.
No, I'm not saying.
I just felt compelled to say.
I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it exists.
It's bad.
Can you talk about why it's bad?
That is a gut reaction on why would you want to discourage buybacks relative to dividend payments or any other form of return to shareholders. It's not clear to me what the theoretical argument is. Now, I've heard some people make an argument against buybacks, but they're mainly subjective. Well, companies should be putting their capital to better use. I don't know why you'd want to nudge companies toward one form of returning capital to shareholders over another. That's the semi-rigorous argument I would make.
And let's talk about that better use. It's much more often, hey, companies that can't find a better use. Because, again, if a company could generate better return by building a factory, they would.
Right.
Like they don't sit there and say, well, first thing we got to do this quarter is buy back stock. No,
That's right. It's a residual.
If you talk to anyone who's worked in management for any company, the number one thing that they are concerned about is, hey, how do we grow this company faster and how do we make it more profitable and larger? They don't start from the assumption of, well, we need to do a buyback and work backwards from there. It's the opposite of that. And so I think that if you think that buybacks are too high, like in terms of the dollar value of stock being bought back, you have to ask yourself, well, what is the root cause of that problem? And the answer is not, hey, let's tax buybacks more to make them less attractive. Because now you're just saying, okay, we can't find a better investment option for this money. Buybacks are now less attractive. So what do? We just park it in, a treasury and do that.
Yeah, I think we're saying the same thing, but from slightly different angles. It's none of the government's. As I said to Mike Armstrong yesterday, I'm very predictable. I am a free market libertarian. I believe government should mostly get out of the way. So when I criticize tariffs, it's not that I'm a never Trumper. It's that I think they're bad. I didn't like Biden's either. When I criticize something like this, and not that anybody's wondering, gee, what makes him tick? I'm just trying to explain my thought process here. Because there are others who say, no, I think there's some market inefficiency, imperfect competition, or something that someone, say, left of center would advocate for government intervention in response to. So my knee-jerk reaction is always, you better make a darn good case for government interfering with private decisions before bossing people around. That's kind of where I'm coming from. But I also think there's a good economic argument here.
And I always come back, like you and I approach this from different angles, but I always come back to, hey, if there was more competition, profits would be lower and you'd be forced to reinvest in order to compete more. And so you wouldn't see this.
Amen.
So we get to the same point from kind of a different approach there.
Absolutely.
Now that we've done that, I forget what my original point was, but thank you for listening to that segment. We're going to take a quick break. We have one more in which to redeem ourselves, so stick around for Stack Roulette after this.
Tariff fever is in high gear. We've got the latest on what might be next and how long it might last, only here on the Financial Exchange Radio Network. New Englanders love the Caribbean, and now there's a Caribbean travel channel available for you to learn all about Caribbean culture while you're planning your next trip to your favorite island. The TravelShareIt.com marketplace is loaded with information about the arts, festivals, food, and music throughout the Caribbean, and is an interactive website featuring daily travel deals to any island of your choice. Book your next Caribbean vacation on the most comprehensive travel channel for the islands, TravelShareIt.com. That's TravelShareIt.com. There are critical mistakes you can make during the estate planning process that may have a damaging effect on your financial strategy. Cushing & Dolan's new guide is called Detour Ahead, Estate Planning Blunders to Avoid. Get yours today and make the right decisions to protect your assets. Call 866-848-5699. That's 866-848-5699 or request it online at legalexchangeshow.com. The proceeding was paid for and the views expressed are solely those of Cushing & Dolan. Cushing & Dolan and or Armstrong Advisory may contact you offering legal or investment services. Cushing & Armstrong do not endorse each other and are not affiliated.
Hi, this is Mike Armstrong from the Armstrong Advisory Group. Estate and financial planning go hand in hand, and one of the most common ways to keep that bond secure is with a trust. Our new guide, called Trusts in Your Financial Plan, is available right now. In it, we'll discuss the various types of trusts that exist and how they might benefit your planning process. Trusts provide a number of different protections for your assets, including privacy, control, and tax efficiency. If you're retired or nearing retirement and have concerns about your financial strategy and whether or not a trust may help, call us today at 800-393-4001 and ask for your free guide called Trusts and Your Financial Plan. Learn about how a trust could make a difference for you and your family by calling 800-393-4001. That number again is 800-393-4001, or you can request the guide from ArmstrongAdvisory.com.
The proceeding was paid for by Armstrong Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Nothing in the ad or in any Armstrong guide is specific financial, legal, or tax advice. Consult your own financial, tax, and estate planning advisors before making any investment decisions. Armstrong may contact you to offer investment advisory services. The United States Virgin Islands is consistently voted one of the top Caribbean destinations. And recently, 2 of their beaches, Trunk Bay in St. John and Maggins Bay in St. Thomas, were voted a top 10 best beach in the Caribbean at the 2025 Traveler's Choice Best of the Best Awards. From the pristine beaches to its world-class dining, rich history, incredible golf, and perfect weather, the USVI has everything you need to make memories that will last a lifetime. From the moment you arrive, you will fall naturally in rhythm with the heartbeat of the islands. There's no money to exchange, and travel from New England could not be easier. Whether you're looking for a romantic getaway or a family vacation, the U.S. Virgin Islands is the perfect place for your next adventure. Go to visitusvi.com right now for more information and to book your trip. The USVI is America's Caribbean paradise. Go to visitusvi.com today. That's visitusvi.com.
Hey, listen, are you a 50-year-old person looking for term life insurance? Then you need to talk to Bob. Bob specializes in helping people find $1 million or more of term life insurance for a couple of $100 a month. Look, you need to know there's a price war in the term life insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call Bob, and he'll shop and see how much money he can save you. Look, this could be the last term life insurance policy you ever have. Your rates are guaranteed for the next 20 years. That's right, guaranteed level rates for the next 20 years. And if you're a smoker or your health is not perfect, Bob has great rates for you too. So for $1 million of term life insurance coverage for a couple of $100 a month, call Bob right now. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. 800-965-7987. That's 800-965-7987. Paid for by Term Direct.
Miss any of the show? The Financial Exchange Show podcast is available on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. This is the Financial Exchange Radio Network.
The Financial Exchange is proud of our partnership with the Disabled American Veterans Department of Massachusetts. This year's 5K is Saturday, November 8th, and registration is now open. The race has sold out each of the past 4 years, and slots will fill up quickly, so don't delay. Visit dav5k.boston and reserve your spot or join our team here at the Financial Exchange by registering under Team TFE. That's Saturday, November 8th for this year's DAV 5K. Sign up now at dav5k.boston.
All right, we got listen, it's 2025. It's kind of hard sometimes to know what's satire and what isn't. Mark Zuckerberg, in an interview with podcaster Dwarkesh Patel, said this quote: "The average American, I think, has fewer than 3 friends, 3 people they'd consider friends, and the average person has demand for meaningfully more. I think it's like 15 friends." He said this in response to, hey, is AI going to be our friend in the future? And not just one friend, apparently we're going to have 12 AI friends. And to which I say, it's pure poppycock. Like, it's absolutely ludicrous that we are going to have AI friends. We may have AI assistants. We may even have robots that eventually help us around the house. they are not going to be friends because they are not alive. And if anyone wants to like challenge me on this and be like, well, actually, you don't need to be alive to be a friend, that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion too, because that's all these are. They're just opinions. But I am personally never going to have an AI friend.
My question is do these AI friends have their own said Instagram and Facebook pages?
They already do.
So
they already do.
That's terrifying.
They already do. They announced a couple, 6 months or so ago, that they were trying to push all of these AI personalities into like Instagram and Facebook. It went horribly at first. They had to pull them back. There's, I forget the name of it. There's actually a social network out there that advertises itself as Instagram but without the people, that is all AI for you. So the only people and things you see are generated by AI.
Social AI?
I couldn't tell you. Maybe that's it.
What's the benefit to this?
Nothing.
Come on.
Well,
just stop Zuckerberg.
Sorry. Yes, Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I don't know how he elicits.
Well, he's a robot himself.
Yeah, there is something inherently funny about him making this statement that we have the demand for 15 friends. I don't know how you elicit that.
What does that mean?
How you ascertain that? That's sort of, I mean, I know what it, I think if an economist used that with respect to like an inanimate good, they would say, well, there's excess demand as evidenced by shortages if there's a price cap or something like that. I don't know how you come to the conclusion, and there's probably some science behind this. I'm just saying I don't understand it. Probably some science behind it. We'll give him credit that it's well-grounded, but the idea on his face sounds preposterous, right?
Here's what I think you can say. Again, just as a human being who exists in the real world, I think. I certainly would love to be able to spend more time with friends and do more stuff with them and have more connections to people that have been friends at some point in my life. People I went to high school, college with, people I've met along the way in work, yada, yada. The limiting factor is not, hey, I can't find enough friends. It's that, I don't know, I got 2 kids and a job, and there's no time in the calendar to hang out with enough people in life because there's a million things going on. It's not something where I say, gee, if only I could find someone who I wanted to be friends with. No, I've found those people. I just don't have enough time for all of them, and they would likely say the same thing about me, which is why, hey, I only talk to you once a year, and we catch up, and then, we kind of go our separate ways. It's not because I don't have that person as close as I'd like to. It's a time issue, not a why can't I find enough friends issue.
Yeah, it seems like we've got bigger problems for AI to work on.
Maybe. I don't know.
He also mentions therapists in this.
Yeah, let's talk about how that could be, kind of really bad. So, here's the thing.
Freaking Zuckerberg, man.
Look, this really seems to me like we're heading down a path of, well, we couldn't get people into the metaverse to have fun. So now we're gonna
meta couch.
Right, somehow AI is gonna replace what the metaverse was gonna be, and we're gonna sell you on a device that gets you into AI somehow.
Wasn't the metaverse supposed to partially address this though? Couldn't you go there to socialize? But nobody's taking advantage of it. So how do you square that?
Well, you had no
with
legs. You had no legs in the metaverse.
Yeah, I could probably.
It was a problem. There were no legs in the metaverse.
Yeah. Okay. But the fact that nobody...
Will your AI therapist have legs? I don't know.
The fact that nobody used it, doesn't that tell him... And again, I'm sure they've thought this through, but doesn't that tell him maybe there's not an excess demand for friends? Nobody bought the first version of this thing you rolled out.
Well, here's the other part that's kind of creepy. There was a piece, I forget where it was, I read it over the weekend, basically about people that are having AI-induced psychosis, where they converse with the AI to the point where it starts telling them stuff that is actually dangerous because it's not real, telling them that they are a messenger for the future of the world and getting them into some really bad headspace. And so that's again, I'm not saying that like you can't meet humans that like lead you down a bad path as well, but why the only way that you would do something with AI is if it's safer and better than what you are doing elsewhere, and I don't think there's any evidence to that at this point. So I'm out on AI friends. Period. We're done for the day. We'll see you tomorrow on the Financial Exchange. Trust can play a key role in your financial strategy, and understanding the different kinds and their purpose may